You know that moment when someone greets you like an old friend and your mind goes completely blank? Not just their name, their entire identity feels just out of reach. You recognize their face, you remember you've met them, maybe you even remember the conversation you had, but the name is gone. And in that moment, something shifts inside you. You start calculating, stalling, hoping the conversation moves in a direction where you don't have to say it. Because forgetting a name doesn't feel like a small mistake. It feels personal, like you failed at something basic, something you were supposed to remember. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if forgetting names easily isn't a sign of carelessness, but a sign of how your mind is wired to process the world? There's more going on here than most people realize, because when you meet someone, your brain isn't focused on one thing. It's doing multiple things at once. You're reading their expression, noticing their tone, figuring out what kind of person they are, thinking about how to respond. And right in the middle of all that, they say their name. A single, no context, no meaning yet. From a psychological perspective, this matters more than it seems. Your brain doesn't store information equally. It prioritizes meaning. Things that connect to emotion, experience, or something familiar, those get remembered. But names? They're often just labels. They don't trigger an image. They don't carry a feeling. So unless your brain attaches them to something, they don't stay. It's not that you didn't hear it. It's that your brain didn't file it. And there's another layer to this. People who forget names easily are often very active internally during social interactions, not distracted, but engaged in a different way. There's a quiet awareness running in the background. Am I saying the right thing? Am I listening properly? What should I say next? That internal dialogue splits your attention, and attention is what decides what gets remembered. If your focus is divided, even slightly, your brain doesn't fully encode the moment, so the name passes through without ever settling in. Psychologists have observed something similar in what's called the next-in-line effect. When people are preparing to speak, they remember less of what was just said to them, because their mind has already moved forward. And in social situations, this happens more than we realize. You're not just listening, you're also preparing, which means the name arrives at the exact moment your brain is least available to store it. But here's the part that's often misunderstood. This doesn't mean you're not attentive. In fact, way people expect. Because your mind isn't built like a list. It's built like a network. It holds on to what feels meaningful and lets go of what doesn't attach. And that often develops over time. Sometimes from environments where understanding people mattered more than memorizing details, where reading tone, mood, or intention was more important than labels, or simply from a mind that naturally prioritizes depth over structure, and neither way is better. Some people remember names instantly, others remember people more deeply, but without the label. Both are valid ways of processing the world. But there is a quiet trade-off. When you don't remember names easily, you can start to feel slightly out of place in social situations, because names are expected. They signal recognition. And when you don't have that signal, even if you remember everything else, it can feel like something is missing, not because you didn't care, but because the way you remember doesn't match the way people expect you to remember. And that mismatch creates unnecessary guilt. But if you look closely, something important becomes clear. You don't forget people, you forget labels. The person is still there in your memory. Their tone, their energy, the way they made you feel. That part stayed. And maybe that says more about your mind than the one thing it tends to lose. So if this is something you've experienced, that quiet moment of recognition without a name, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain isn't failing, it's prioritizing differently. It's choosing meaning over labels, experience over structure. And once you understand that, the feeling around it starts to change.
it becomes less about "I should have remembered" and more about noticing how your mind actually works. And if you pay attention to that, you might start to see other patterns too. Not problems to fix, just parts of you that were never meant to work the same way as everyone else. And if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss future uploads.